I watched Sabrina Ionescu answer what sounded like a routine post-game question after New York lost to Indiana. The Fever had won, 106-92. They had made 16 three-pointers. The easy explanation was that Indiana got hot, New York got buried, and the box score told the whole story. Ionescu gave a different answer. "Their bigs are a handful," she said. "We have to go and help in the paint, which allows kickouts." That sentence turned a shooting performance into a defensive problem. New York wasn't leaving shooters because it forgot Indiana could shoot. Its defenders were moving toward the paint because Aliyah Boston and Indiana's other interior threats demanded help. Every step toward the lane created space somewhere else. Then Ionescu named the player responsible for finding that space. Caitlin kind of being the head of that with 10 assists and obviously her shooting ability, but also her ability to get downhill and make the right reads. That's the choice New York faced. Help in the paint, and Caitlin Clark can pass to an open shooter, stay attached to the shooters, and Clark can attack the space in front of her. Pressure her farther from the basket, and the passing lanes grow behind the first defender. The phrase, "impossible choice," wasn't Ionescu's. It's the cleanest description of the geometry she outlined. New York head coach Chris DeMarco confirmed the first part of that geometry. He said the Liberty were committed to taking away the paint. Then he acknowledged the cost. "If we're going to commit to taking the paint away," DeMarco said, "at times people are going to get open threes." DeMarco wasn't announcing a plan to abandon the perimeter. His criticism was more precise. New York needed sharper rotations, better contests, and second and third efforts after the first defender moved. The Liberty's initial decision was defensible. Letting Boston and Indiana's front court operate without help creates another problem. The breakdown came after the choice, when one rotation had to become two, and two had to become three. Clark kept forcing those movements. Her final line was 22 points and 10 assists. She made 4 threes of her own, so New York couldn't treat her as a passer, waiting for someone else to finish the possession. Her shooting stretched the first defender. Her downhill pressure occupied the next one. Her passing found the player that rotation had exposed. 10 assists measured the passes that became baskets. They didn't measure every advantage created before the final pass. Every defender pulled one step too far, or every possession in which Clark's range changed where the defense had to begin. The dilemma starts well before she reaches the paint. Against a conventional point guard, a defender can retreat beneath a screen and protect the drive. Clark's range makes that space dangerous. Bring the defender higher, and the area behind the screen opens. Send a second defender, and the Fever can play 4 against 3 once the ball escapes. New York's answer was to crowd the lane behind the first action. Indiana moved the ball outside. The punishment arrived fast. The Fever went 11 for 14 from 3 during the first half. For one stretch in the second quarter, Indiana made all 7 of its three-point attempts. New York's paint protection was producing the intended crowd near the basket, but the ball was leaving that crowd faster than the defense could recover. Clark didn't make all those shots. That's the point. Kelsey Mitchell scored 28 points on 11 for 16 shooting. She made all 4 of her three-point attempts. Mitchell's movement and release turned Clark's reads into points before New York could reset. Aliyah Boston added 19 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists. Her value stretched beyond that line. She was one of the interior players New York believed required help. When Boston's position pulls a defender into the paint, the advantage exists before she touches the ball. Sophie Cunningham and Indiana's other perimeter options completed the spacing. The defense couldn't solve the action by identifying one shooter and leaving everyone else. Every available target made the next rotation more urgent. This is where Clark-only explanations become too narrow. Clark organized the problem, but Indiana's teammates made each choice expensive. Without Boston's paint gravity, the help defender can remain closer to the perimeter. Without Mitchell's conversion, the correct pass becomes an empty statistical possibility. Without multiple shooters holding their positions, New York can rotate from the weakest option and live with the result. Indiana had the entire chain working on August 11th. Clark forced the first decision. Boston and the front court occupied the help. Mitchell and the shooters converted the opening. The result was 16 made threes and Indiana's 15th game of at least 100 points this season, extending its own WNBA single-season record. Clark's 10 assists also gave her a league-leading 9th game this season with at least 20 points and 10 assists. It was the 19th such performance of her career, already the most in WNBA history. Mitchell extended her streak of 20-point games to 17, another WNBA single-season record. Those records came from the same structure. Clark's scoring threat prevented the defense from treating her as a conventional distributor. Mitchell's scoring stopped it from loading every resource onto Clark. Boston's interior presence kept the defense from solving both guards with perimeter pressure alone. New York had 3 fires and 5 defenders. Every attempted solution moved fuel toward another one. The box score still leaves an important objection. Indiana shot about 64% from 3. That isn't a normal expectation, even for an elite offense. 11 makes on 14 first-half attempts include outstanding shot creation, but they also include a level of conversion no team can promise every night. Ionescu raised that point herself. If they don't make all of those shots, is it a different ball game? She asked. Who knows? That caveat can't be edited out. Indiana's margin grew because open players also made difficult shots, late clock shots, and attempts that a defense might accept over a full season. A scheme can produce an advantage without guaranteeing a 64% finish. The useful question isn't whether Indiana can repeat the percentage, it's whether Clark can repeat the choice. Those are different claims. Shooting percentage describes the result after the ball leaves a player's hands. Advantage creation describes what happened before the release. The defense sent help. That help exposed a passing lane. Clark recognized it, and Indiana generated a shot from the player the possession had freed. New York's postgame answers support that process. Ionescu described the bigs forcing paint help and Clark directing the kickouts. DeMarco confirmed the commitment to protecting the paint and identified the rotations that followed. They didn't claim all 16 threes came from the same action. Transition, individual shot-making, broken possessions, and defensive mistakes contributed. Basketball refuses to become that tidy. The mechanism doesn't need to explain every basket. It needs to explain why the same defensive stress kept returning. If you're judging whether this was one hot night or a repeatable fever advantage, don't begin with the 16 makes. Begin with the decisions that produced the attempts. A future opponent can hold Indiana below 64% and still spend the entire game sending 2 defenders toward one action, rotating toward Boston and chasing the pass Clark released a second earlier. That's why I went back to Ionescu's answer instead of stopping at the scoreboard. She wasn't describing a mystical shooting night. She was listing New York's defensive responsibilities in order. Handle the bigs, help in the paint, recover to the kickout, respect Clark's shot, contain her drive, and survive the read. One possession can ask a defense to complete that entire list. Dallas gets the next attempt on August 14th. The Wings already beat Indiana, 107-104 in the regular season opener on May 9th. Clark finished that game with 20 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, and 5 turnovers. Her late three-point attempt that could have tied the score missed. That first meeting gives Dallas a reference point, but Indiana's offense now carries more evidence. Clark has produced 19 career games with at least 20 points and 10 assists. Mitchell enters with 17 consecutive 20-point performances. The Fever have reached 100 points 15 times this season. Dallas doesn't need to stop each number independently. It needs to break the chain connecting them. One option is switching more actions and reducing the immediate need for paint help. That can keep defenders attached to shooters, but it may create size mismatches for Boston or give Clark a slower defender in space. Another option is showing zone coverage. That can place more bodies near driving lanes without assigning a second defender to Clark in the same way. It also gives an elite passer fixed gaps to probe, especially when Indiana moves the ball before the zone settles. Dallas can pressure Clark higher and try to force the ball from her hands. New York's experience shows the next requirement. The defense must rotate behind that pressure before Mitchell, Boston, or another shooter receives the pass. Every adjustment changes the concession. None removes the need to choose one. The more revealing test arrives on August 22nd, when Indiana visits New York. DeMarco will have the same opponent, the same central organizer, and a full post-game record of what failed in Indianapolis. He can change the initial coverage, alter the help position, or demand faster recoveries. What he can't do is erase the competing threats that created the problem. If New York protects the paint again, its perimeter rotations have to arrive earlier without giving Clark a cleaner lane through the middle. If the Liberties stay home on shooters, the first defender has to contain Clark without relying on the same help. If they send 2 defenders near the ball, the remaining 3 must cover Boston, Mitchell, and the weak side with no wasted movement. That isn't evidence that Clark can never be defended. New York has beaten Indiana before, and every offense has possessions that stall. Clark turns the ball over, shooters miss, screens arrive at poor angles. Help defenders sometimes disguise their intentions long enough to interrupt the read. The challenge is the number of correct decisions required on a single trip. Indiana needed only one of New York's decisions to arrive late. Clark could score if the first defender gave her space, drive if the defender crowded her, or pass when help committed. Her teammates then needed to convert. On August 11th, they did. Mitchell's 28 points punished the perimeter. Boston's 19 punished the interior. Clark's 22 points preserved her threat as a scorer, and her 10 assists measured how often the ball reached the next answer. That distribution is harder to solve than a single-player scoring explosion. A defense can trap one scorer and accept the next pass when the other 4 players are reluctant shooters. Indiana's lineup gave New York no harmless destination. The Fever won't make 11 of their first 14 threes every night. That figure is the part of the game most likely to move back toward normal. The defensive sequence can remain. Paint pressure can still pull help. Clark can still identify the opening. Mitchell can still force a defender to remain attached. Boston can still punish a smaller matchup. The shots can fall at an ordinary rate while the defense continues making an extraordinary number of decisions. Ionescu's postgame answer lasted only a few sentences. It contained the bigs, the help, the kickouts, Clark's shooting, her downhill pressure, and her reads. DeMarco added New York's commitment to the paint and the failed rotations behind it. When I replayed that answer, the 16 threes stopped looking like the whole explanation. They became the receipt for one night when every cost of New York's choice arrived at once. Dallas gets the problem on August 14th. New York gets it again on August 22nd. Postgame answer is already written on the next scouting report.